So before we move on from the transfer portal discussion, I'll throw this out there. Where would be the designated areas to target? I got to think Kevin mentioned tight end, and that may have just been as an example. Maybe extra offensive line from a depth standpoint, and then the rest, I can't think. Defensive line, I got to think maybe linebacker and secondary, maybe.
Well, the problem with bringing in backups, I mean, is that they're going to be a backup because you're not bringing in somebody saying you're coming in to start. Because Jonah Jackson knew he was coming in and there was going to be a spot for him right there. Ohio State has a very solid starting five. I would say Ohio State's probably, I'd say 7 deep on the offensive line. You would still love to have some depth there, but are you going to be able to sit there and go and lure Alabama or Clemson offensive linemen to come over to Ohio State to sit there and sit on the second team when they probably were second team where they were at? I mean, I don't know. So, it's not always a one-to-one situation of Ohio State's had this fantastic success in landing guys like Justin Fields and so on and so forth. I mean, offensive line is not a position that you normally rotate a bunch. You can come in as Trey Sermon and be a 1A to a 1 in terms of running back and then go nuts at the end of the season and become the 1 yourself. But, I don't know. We're at tight end. I don't know if we necessarily have a clear leader emerging. I mean, if they're able to go get a rock star tight end, what's to say that you couldn't get there and see a lot of reps? Plus, two, I don't think Ohio State's going to play a lot of 12, but, I mean, there are certain situations where you have 2 tights out there anyway.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead,
Steve.
Tony.
No, go ahead.
I like offensive line as well. If you can find a Justin Jackson type, that can come in and play. Beyond that, is anybody really going to want to come to Ohio State to sit on the bench? I think that's one thing. I don't really. I mean, maybe a corner, maybe just as an insurance policy. But I think you're pretty well set. Otherwise, tight end, maybe. I think I'm not. You're always looking for an upgrade. I mean, you don't need depth. You've got plenty of depth. So I don't know. I don't see a tremendous need, but at the same time, when you only have 7 dependable offensive linemen, you could use an 8th, maybe. So, maybe kick the tires on somebody who's willing to come in and fight for a job and accept a backup job if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and that's a tough ask. And then when the player gets here and they see that it was more of a lure than a realistic shot at a job, that can create issues as well. So they're in a tough spot on the offensive line. The thing is, when you look at their successes that they've brought in, they had needs at those positions and they had openings. They did not have a quarterback when they got Justin Fields. They needed Jonah Jackson out in the interior of that offensive line. The incumbent, the number 1 running back when they went and got Trey Sermon was Master Teague, and we saw how that went. And so you look at this roster and it's like, where is that void to be able to bring in an impact transfer? And there isn't. And they were kicking the tires on tight ends in the portal before they moved Cade Stover over, because they probably didn't want to have to move Cade Stover. And when they couldn't find somebody in the portal, then, well, we know we have a guy that we like. And he was immediately the number 1 tight end in spring. So I think they're set there. And Steve, the cornerback is an interesting one, but we know they love their 2 second-year guys. And if Cameron Brown can't stay healthy, then they still have somebody there that can step in. But they're not overly deep at corner because they've got 2 proven guys in Cameron Brown and Denzel Burke, if you want to call Cameron Brown proven. And then you've got 2 second-year guys who have played very little and then 2 true freshmen. And so that's your cornerback room. And that's pretty thin. But again, you're going to ask somebody to come in and maybe see the field 4, 5, 6 times on defense this season and maybe 3 to 12 plays a game. And that's not really a great sell job, no matter what kind of NIL incentives And that's a whole other thing where, well, just NIL is going to change everything. Playing time is still going to change. Playing time is still going to be the decider in so much of what happens in college football.
Yeah, corners are kind of divas, and you're going to have a hard time convincing somebody to come in. And the thing is you bring them in. What kind of message does that send to Ja'Kalen Johnson and to Jordan Hancock if you're bringing in a corner that thinks that they're going to shoehorn into that top 2, top 3 type of cut? So, there's a huge element of roster management as well, and it goes back to the story of if Ohio State would have really pursued Eli Ricks, what would that have done to the cornerback room? And a lot of people will be like, well, if these guys don't want to compete, let them go somewhere else. Okay, it's great to be well-intentioned and have all those thoughts. Now let me introduce you to the real world where everything matters.
Well, and Ryan Day always talks about they have to fit the culture. And that was one of the amazing things about Jonah Jackson. He showed up and got along with everybody and wasn't big timing anybody. He came from Rutgers, so he was pretty thrilled to be at Ohio State, and, with the expectations of, wow, you guys get to win on a weekly basis. This will be amazing. And he endeared himself to his teammates. And so you need that aspect of it too. And so that's also a consideration. And then also you have to then compete against Alabama in the portal as well, which doesn't go great for many people.
And Miami these days, Life Wallet.
Life wallet, yes.
Anytime the term's brought up culture, I get it. I understand what direction they're going in when they make that statement, but sometimes I would like to pin down a coach to say, okay, explain to us what your culture is. Another discussion for another time.